Hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I got two scary words that every business owner just trembles when they hear, and it's not anything to do with the IRS, so you're safe there. But as a business owner myself for most of my life, I know that there's these two words that were like, no way. I mean, my heart sunk when I heard them. And I immediately went to try to justify, immediately went to try and fix, and blah, blah, blah. Interested to know what those two words are? I'm going to let you know in a minute. But first, I want to say hi to Dr. Merrylue Martin. How are you today?
I am great, Dave. Good morning.
Awesome. You are the president and CEO of the Job Joy Group. I could not say that 5 times fast without messing it up. So I'm glad I
It's a
got through
fun
it
thing to
once.
say.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us, what's the Job Joy Group?
Yeah, primarily helping people and leaders as we get together, in this crazy new workplace, extract a reason to get up every day and want to go to work and be there. And, there's so much that's just changing in what we do is specialize in helping leaders to create an environment that's going to attract and keep the best people. And once those people are there, to create an environment that's going to want them to stay and want them to be engaged and grow. And so the rules have changed quite a bit in the last, I'd say, 2-3 years on how to do that. So our
Sure.
mission is to just bring that to the front and help people figure that out.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, the words that just make me cringe is I quit. Man, I'll never forget some of the really pivotal people in my career that had walked in and done that to me early in my career, especially until I started to understand some of this that you're talking about here, Merrylue. You bring up words like engagement and growth, and we talk about all these different words, right? So as we talk today through this, I'm gonna do my best to try and keep this simple, because for me, I think about engagement and I think, well, isn't everybody engaged? I mean, don't they all come to work and they love getting there? They show up early, they got a smile on their face, right? This is
Right.
my thought process. And then you find Gallup that says 2 out of 3 people roughly show up every day not engaged in their job, and
Right.
they're trying to get out of things. I try really hard not to look at that as a negative, but that's a pretty tough place to start.
Yes,
So,
that's correct.
yeah, do you tend to how do you deal with that engagement? Because I see it right now as a lot of people that I deal with, they have that as a big blind spot for them because they say, well, I don't have that problem in my company.
Mm,
And I'm like,
great.
boy, all the companies that I see around, there must be one big company, Merrylue, with all the disengaged employees, because no one wants to admit this. So is that a big blind spot that you see as well in your travels?
It's very much so. And the reason behind that, Dave, it's such an abstract term. It's how do we define it? And
Right,
we can very subjectively define it. And if we say, oh gosh, my people are showing up, they
right.
haven't quit. So
Yeah,
therefore, they're physically there. They must be engaged.
right.
We're meeting business goals, so they must really be engaged.
Yep,
And
exactly.
we're using now maybe the wrong markers to measure engagement. And where that completely turned around is the challenge we're having in assessing the productivity of remote workers, of
Okay,
hybrid workers, where work is available in that forum, because people
sure.
are expecting, because you show up and you're on camera, you must be engaged.
Right.
And it's not the case.
Wow. So how do you define engagement for yourself? I mean, from your research that you've done, where do you see that word show up and how do you define that?
Yes. First of all, engagement is a uniquely individual, human specific term. And that's one of the challenges we've had as organizations. We keep trying to solve retention with an organizational solution, and it's not. It's an individual, human being per human being situation we have to address. And I'm going to just say right up front, here's the magic formula. When you think about any position we've taken as an employee, or certainly as a team leader leading employees, we're going to balance 3 R's that are ultimately going to determine whether or not I'm engaged by my own definition as an employee and as the leader. And here they are. When we sign up for a job, the very first R that comes into our view are those requirements that I must meet to succeed at this job. Now, the direct requirements, we can read the job description, right?
Sure.
For any job, we can see what we're going to be asked to do. Those are direct, pretty upfront. However, there are indirect requirements that are going to impact me uniquely as an individual. Example, I might now have to go into the office twice a week, and that's an hour commute. Now, that might be a requirement for me, something I don't really want to do, or not, depending on the employee. So we have this bucket of requirements.
Okay.
So I want you to think of a teeter-totter right now, kind of a scale, right, with a fulcrum. So on one side, there's that bucket of requirements. After about a period of time, 6 days, 6 weeks, depending on the job, as the requirements and the dust is settling, the honeymoon period's over.
Yep.
Now what starts to weigh in on whether or not I'm going to be engaged are the rewards. That's the second R.
Okay.
These are the tangibles. So in my mind, I'm balancing, okay, I'm putting out these requirements, right? I'm getting back these rewards. Do the rewards at least balance the requirements? And by the rewards, I mean the tangibles like a paycheck. Maybe it's a bonus. Maybe it's a 401k. Maybe it's a stock option. Maybe my student loan's going to get paid. Maybe it's a certification I'm going to get to take for certain training, whatever those things are. All right, so far, life is good. I'm feeling pretty engaged.
Right.
Here's the problem, though. We are all people first. We are human beings first. Whatever else we want to identify is always going to be second. And because we're people first, here comes that third R. It's the respect. To what degree do I feel valued while I'm at this job, while I'm doing this work? Do I have autonomy? Am I showing up? And do I have a purpose? Am I being tapped into and appreciated and valued? So to answer your question, an employee that perceives all 3 of those R's in balance, they will never leave that position, and they are 100% engaged.
Wow.
Now you look at the variations, and let's talk about what disengagement looks like. And I'd like to bring in the phrase we've heard a lot about lately, this quiet quitting. So let's look at this balance. Let's say I'm working with a company now whose requirements are pretty robust. But you know what? The rewards perhaps are even greater. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm making good returns here on what I'm doing. And let's say, though, that respect bucket barely exists. It's almost empty.
Sure.
Now, this person's going to probably stay at that job, but here's the tape they're playing in their head. I hate this job.
Yeah.
I don't know where to go, though, and make this kind of money. Is that person engaged? No. They'll stay. And here's where quiet quitting, if the 3 R's are out of balance, and this is what we saw, if those rewards and that respect doesn't at least equal to or supersede those requirements, that employee is going to start minimizing those requirements themselves. So it matches the existing rewards.
Wow.
That's my take on engagement and how to define that.
I love that. I've never heard it that way. That is fantastic. I'm going to steal some of that stuff. So if you see it out and about, thank you. I'll at least credit you. I love the people are people first and employees second, and I think what probably some of the entrepreneurs and business owners listening right now are bucking is the fact that they have something to do with that engagement.
Indeed.
Right? It's super easy to say, hey, I hired a rock star. I'm paying them rock star wages. why do I have to respect them? Why do I have to do anything? They work for me. There's some of that old stuff creeping back in.
Right.
So I just want to encourage anybody that's listening to kind of keep your wall down for a minute and think about that, because it's super easy to blame other people and say, hey, I paid them, so they should respect me. I'm the leader. I mean, I remember back when my dad was, early in his career, and he would talk about the boss, right? That was like the fearsome word. And in the corner office, in the smoke-filled room, there was a guy that rarely ever came out of his office. And, when he did, he would come out and bark orders. And so, there's a huge shift there. And I think that respect word is really key. I love the fact that people are people first. The challenge is, and you do a ton of work with Myers-Briggs, and you do a ton of work with DISC. We both know that means that there are some people that aren't a people person, I'm going to say. They're more fact-based. They're more based on research. They are more interested in results and less interested in people. So how would you, for somebody listening that's kind of foreign to them, I don't want to bring out my guitar and light a fire and start singing Kumbaya with my team, okay?
Right.
Because that's just
Right.
not how I'm built. How do
Yes.
you address that with that type of a person there, Merrylue?
Yes, I love that perspective. And it's so much of the work I do is very practical work. To answer that question, to tell a new leader, hey, you just need to get to know your people. What does that even mean?
Right.
It's not helpful. So in my book, The Big Quit Survival Guide, it's just that. It's filled with checklists and scripts and even things that this particular person who you just described,
Sure.
who doesn't align with people more naturally than others, it has very specific things to do. So, for example, to give your person that you're just bringing onto your team a little checklist of getting to know you. What is your favorite hobby? What do you do in your free time? And giving this all to the team to be able to go back and reference something in a document that they could say, hey, here's a bag of Skittles because I know it's your favorite junk food and I just wanted to say thanks.
Sure. Yeah.
Something like that. Very, very helpful. But what I do suggest for people who don't naturally manage by walking around, or have a team that's half remote and half hybrid and half in
Sure.
the office,
Sure.
is to literally put on their calendar a reminder, call it what you want, schmooze time.
Yeah.
Check in with Merrylue, check in with Dave, and even factor that into a calendar, because those folks do love checklists and they love to be able to be very practical in their
Yeah.
approach, but it just reminds them. And
Wow.
that's one idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think that you bring that up where some people are working remote, some people are working at home. It's so easy. Some are in the office. I think it's so easy, and I hear a lot of excuses, and we use these, reasons as reasons not to do things. And so I think that this is where, if you're struggling with creativity, to get creative, to connect with people, do you find somebody else that's better at it, Merrylue? I mean, what do you do when you really are like, I don't connect well. I just want them to get their job done, and it might be a blind spot. It might be blinders. Who knows what it is, but they just, they're not resonating with what you're saying. Is it better off to find somebody else than maybe on the leadership team that does better resonate with that? Or what are your thoughts there?
I would say the most important relationship that an employee could ever have in any position is with their actual leader, the
Okay.
one that they're reporting directly to. That's where that trust and that's where that respect most often has to be garnered and developed. And so it's with that leader, as we've all heard this phrase, people don't leave businesses, they leave a boss.
Yeah.
And there's still a great deal of truth to that. Now, where we can go to help these folks is to, well, what do I say? Now, here's an example. Rather than just saying chat with your people and get to know them, in the book, have exactly what I just described, have a 3R conversation. And I even tell you what to say,
Mm.
and how to do it. So it would be something like this. You've just joined my team. Let's say you've gotten your feet wet and
Mhm.
we've moved around. And I would say, Dave, it's really important that we define between you and I what behaviors would be most examples of me being respectful to you. And why this is so important, Dave, is it's going to vary by person and person. And
Yep.
here's what I mean. You might come to me and say, well, Merrylue, I'm new to this industry. If you could just ensure that I had 5 minutes of your time just to check in, just make sure you were there if I had any questions, or you would respond to an email within 10 minutes, this first 6 weeks as I get my feet wet, that would be so respectful for me.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
mistake I make, I think, okay, that demonstrates respect. No, I have another team member who's been around a while, and he says to me, Merrylue, my biggest fear is to be micromanaged.
Yeah.
All I want is give
Yeah.
me my marching orders, we'll check in as
Yeah.
scheduled, and then let me fly.
No news is
So,
good news, right?
right, because, people have very, very different needs.
Yeah.
So, to answer your question, number one, that direct reporting relationship, that leader needs to be the one who is reaching out and building that trust and building that kind of relationship. Number two, they need a guideline because they're not just going to do it naturally of, well,
Right.
what should I ask?
Right.
What do I say? And
Yeah.
that's where my help, I think, has been so powerful for leaders in that regard.
That's awesome. Well, so you bring up two important words, trust and relationship. And you and I both do a bunch of work with personality assessments. And this is where I think this is kind of, to me, this is the tool, this is the secret sauce. Because if I have 10 people on my team and I take them at face value, I don't know how to communicate with them. I don't know what drives them. I really don't know what they trust. And we think in our mind that everybody communicates the same way I do. We think, well, everybody trusts the same thing I trust. And we couldn't be further from the truth. Like you
Right.
said, each person, they're a person first. And so they all come at this different. So
Right.
like you said, some people need that 5 minutes a day, and some people look at that 5 minutes a day as an interruption, as threatening because they're, what are you trying to do here? So that's what I think is so powerful about assessments in building teams and in strengthening teams. So
Yes.
that's why I'm so glad you're on today, because we share that value. And I think that for people listening that don't understand that's something that is really, I think, so important, because we're trying everything we can right now to attain or to acquire and to develop the team, and then the important part is to retain them. And I
Yes.
always think about a shepherd and sheep, and shepherd's responsibility is to always have green grass for that sheep so that they don't want to leave. And I think I think the statistic was right now that the average worker has 15 different jobs in their 45-year career, roughly.
Mhm.
So that means like
Mhm.
every 3 years, there's a shift,
Right.
right? And
Right.
boy, I tell
Yes.
you what, as
Yes.
expensive as it is, as disruptive as it is, and quite frankly, as dangerous as it is to have that turnover, I want to do everything I possibly can to retain those good employees. So
Right.
I'm just curious on your end, why is it so hard to retain those people? Why are they not staying? Is it all that respect piece, or are we missing out on the requirements piece? Are we missing out on the rewards as well? Is it all three, or where do you start usually?
Yes, that's a great question. And again, I always begin with, well, what do I know are the givens? And the fact people are human beings. And with that package comes those unique needs. So I look at just trying to measure what is going to attract someone, which would not attract someone else. And I just think, let's look at just the rewards, the recognition. You referred back to it, Dave, a minute ago, and I wanted to capture that. We in our good intentions as leaders, assess the way people want to be treated by the way we prefer to
Yep.
be treated. And then
Correct.
that's kind of a natural human trait, right? And
Yep.
we've learned this golden rule forever: do unto others as we would want them to do unto us. Well, I've upgraded that a bit to the platinum rule. It's do unto others as they need to have done unto them.
Yeah.
And that, you're absolutely right. That's why investing and taking time to assess communication preferences, personality preferences, and those best leaders have one single trait in common. If you were to ask, what is the most important thing a great leader could have, we would get a laundry list of many, many things, and they're all good.
Yep.
There's one trait that stands out, and that trait is self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
To the degree I know about myself so that I can mitigate what might be getting in my way to be a successful leader to the multitude of different people that I have on my team. So if I know that I'm a people person and it's no problem for me to come in and be chatty and talk about the soccer game and this and that, but I know I've got someone on my team who you just described a few minutes ago, who's more process, task.
Yep.
I know that behavior will not be well received. That person won't feel safe. So I have to tone it way down. I might just stop by their desk or send an email and say, checking in on these 3 things.
Absolutely
And that's
right.
great.
Yeah. And
So
if you did that to me, oops, sorry, go ahead, finish.
Yes, I say you're just absolutely right. We just need to help leaders get to that. Yeah.
If you did that to me, Merrylue, I would be like, what did I do wrong?
Me too, right?
Right? Because
And
we're
if I
both
got an
high
email
eyes
that
and we
didn't,
want that connection, right? And that's how it is for me. So if I come up to somebody and I say, they say, hey, what'd you do this weekend? I'll start on Friday night and I'll tell them what we did Friday night and Saturday and Sunday. I have like a 90-second, explanation of what I did over the weekend, right? And I go, well, what'd you do? And they go, nothing. That one word answer crushes me because I'm expecting some reciprocation back. And
exactly right.
We as
Even
leaders,
in an email,
yeah,
if I got an email that said, Merrylue, I need these 3 things by 5:00, I would look at that email and go, oh, no good morning, no happy face.
All right, what's wrong with this person today? They're having a bad day.
What did I do? Exactly. Right.
That is so cool. Well, we as leaders I think this big thing is we don't acclimate well to the person that we're communicating with.
Well
and I just
said.
think of it as a language. And I think, if you and I started this podcast today and I started in a language that you didn't understand, how long would it have been before you raise your hand and go, Dave, I have no clue what you're saying. Now, we all tend to speak the same language grammatically, but our way we deliver that message is really different. And like you said, when I get these emails from people, it says, Dave, please do this, Fred. I'm just looking around, like you said, and I'm like, well, are you okay, Fred? I mean, I'm almost like wanting to call Fred and say, Fred, is everything okay at home?
Right. Or I'm in trouble. I made Fred mad.
Exactly. So I'm going to dive into this a little bit because if somebody's watching or listening right now and they're starting to the light bulbs are starting to come on and they're going, I have a couple of people that I'm concerned about on my team. So what warning signs would I look for if I was looking to see, oh my gosh, are they healthy? Are they in a healthy spot? Is our relationship in a healthy spot? Are these long-term people that are going to stay? What are some warning signs to see before somebody quits?
Yes, great question. The shortest answer and the most direct thing to look for first is any behavior that is not normal for that person as you've known them historically.
Okay.
So, for example, if that person has been the chatty, hey, good morning, and boy, what a great game that was. And all of a sudden, that person is not engaging, is more quiet, has been more distant or removed. That's a warning sign. You might flip that. The person who traditionally doesn't engage with people and
Yeah.
is now making a point to say good morning and trying to show up.
Sure. Yeah.
So I would say anything opposite
Okay.
of what you normally see is your
Okay.
fastest shortcut to that.
That's a great spot. What do you do though? So let's just say, for instance, I see that whatever I'm seeing opposite behavior and it's alerting, again,
Right.
I say, hey, everybody has bad days, right? Everybody's gonna have a
Sure.
speed bump in their life. So don't take one out of context sentence and blow it up. If you're seeing a consistent pattern of, something different, that's I think what you're talking about, correct?
Correct. Start.
So at that spot, if I see that and I see it consistently for whatever, I don't even want to put a time limit on it, but I see it consistently, what is the next step? What would you do next at that spot, Mary Lou?
Yes. Not only is it the next step, it should actually always be the first step. And
Okay.
that's to engage in this 3R conversation right out the gate. And I would have that conversation with something like, so Dave, let's talk about the job. We all show up and we want to put on a good performance for whatever reasons we're here in a job. I want to talk about the requirements of this job. For you, what is what you most embrace? What is it you're not as wild about? What is weighs heavier on that scale for you in terms of requirements? And I need that clarity because there's a good example. Let's say that 2-hour commute that I had to make. For some people, that's a fate worse than anything. It's like, you want me to what? There's no way I'm doing that. For someone else, they're thinking, "Oh my gosh, I could listen to a whole podcast. That's okay with me. I
Sure.
love the downtime." So I even have to find out what parts of this job are you embracing and then what parts do you wish that were different? I'm going to have that conversation and then say, what is it that you're feeling rewarded? Do you feel what you're getting back in terms of what you can take and put in your pocket? How is that feeling? And then let's have that conversation about respect. My point to this, Dave, is that should be a natural, ongoing discussion from the minute I engage that person on the
Sure.
team, even in the interview process.
Gotcha.
So when and if I see some of those warning signs, as we were talking about,
Mhm.
I've already layered a foundation that I can now go back and we can, dig into.
Sure.
So
Okay.
I think that, proactively being
Yeah.
a leader is such a nicer place to be than a reactive leader.
Right. Well, and I was just going to confirm. So rather than wait until you're noticing problem signs, the best leaders are being proactive and
Right,
doing the 3 R's on a consistent basis along the way
right.
so that we're pretty dialed in. If there is something going on, we're quick to be able to jump in and discuss it. And I think it's unique because if I worked for somebody that was always quiet or didn't engage me much, and then all of a sudden they did engage me, I would be like, what's going on there? Right.
Mhm.
So I think that we want to make sure that we have some consistency. And if you start with the 3 R's along the way, I think you're going to see much greater success.
I would agree. And we can start with those 3 R's right in the interview process.
Yeah. Isn't that
Mhm.
crazy? The interview versus the job. And total side note, but I'm amazed from both sides because I sit in a lot of interviews with my clients, and they're trying to hire somebody, and then they hire somebody, and you look back and go, "Man, that person was nowhere close to how they interviewed." And then
Right.
the reverse is like, "Man, who's this guy or who's this girl interviewing? Because I've never seen you smile before, whatever." So it's
Right.
just I don't know. It seems crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the interesting pieces is, you talk about, I'm going to use the word empathy, where,
Mhm.
we're empathetic of who we're sitting in front of. We're trying to now understand them.
Mhm.
And so if we use empathy all along the way, some of the people probably listening are thinking that's weak or that's vulnerable. You're letting them see you sweat. My dad said, don't ever let them see you sweat. I mean,
Right.
if you get shot, just stand up, rub some dirt on and get back in the war. It was like that tough guy thing. And,
Right.
and so I'm just curious, how do you balance that empathy, while still having goals to meet, still having stockholders potentially to make happy? Because that seems like a hard balance for some. So what's your
Yes.
research shown there?
Yes, and you have hit probably one of the number one asks lately in this work environment, particularly since COVID and the paradigm shift of how I want to show up and have work,
Yeah,
fit into my life. This acute awareness, life is fragile, and all of that. And the rally cry that we keep hearing from those best employees people want to keep is treat me like a human being.
sure.
Well, with that comes a healthy dose of empathy. But I have an equation I came up with that has really been very helpful to get leaders to embrace this. It goes
Okay.
like this: empathy minus accountability equals enablement.
Hmm.
The last thing I want to do for a peer, a family member, an employee reporting to me is enable them, because I am taking on beyond a bucket of stress and everything else now to make up for what this employee should be doing or a family member should be doing on
Yeah.
their own volition. And
Hmm.
so when I think about empathy, now what does that really look like? I can be very empathetic. I can certainly understand. And the way I do that is in even a conversation. Things, for example, making eye contact with the person I'm speaking with, not looking at a screen and saying, oh, yes, I hear you. No, I got
Sure.
it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
That tells me right there, there's a lack of empathy and understanding. The
Right.
second thing I can do to demonstrate instant empathy is to acknowledge what I've heard. Now, people misconstrue that thinking, oh, well, they're going to think I agree. No.
Hmm. Yep.
So, Dave, I understand that you have this concern and you're unable to have the report delivered because of X. I understand what I heard you say.
Right. Yep.
I'm not saying it's okay, don't turn in the report.
Yep.
And now the accountability comes in. And
Sure.
here's why I want leaders to be careful. Don't own someone else's accountability. What I tend to hear people say is, well, what can I do to make sure you get that done? Well,
Gotcha.
you could give me 3 days. I mean,
Right.
now I own it.
Yeah.
Instead, what can we do to support getting that report done, given the conflict that you've got now? You
Sure.
tell me what would be the options. So I can be very kind with my words. My mannerisms can be empathetic, but I'm not going to let go of that accountability. So
Yeah.
I think we can confuse empathy with sympathy,
Yeah.
and people can tend to take advantage of us with the sympathy. So that's just a hopefully helpful equation to keep that
Sure.
in mind. We do have to run a business.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's funny because empathy and sympathy sound so close to, if we do interchange those, that can be the kiss of death because, yeah, having the sympathy of like, oh, well, you know what? You can't get that report in today, Mary Lou. I tell you know what? Don't worry about it. I always laugh when people say ASAP because
Right.
I'm like, so what does ASAP mean? And everybody I ever have asked this to, they say it means as soon as possible. And I said, no, you know what? It means as slow as practical.
Oh, I
And
like that.
that's where it's like, boy, we're just so ambiguous sometimes,
Yeah.
our comments, and I see an ASAP stamp or, stamping stuff or putting that in a date needed ASAP. It's like, wow, your ASAP and my ASAP might be two totally different things,
Right.
especially going back to DISC. I'm a high D, so I'm a results oriented person. So when somebody says you got a second to me, I say, yes, I do. And you just used it. So now we're done, right? you know, and that they're
Right.
not even, they want 10 minutes, right? But they said, you got a second, right? And I wish that we could communicate better so that we were really understanding what we're saying and people are able to, you know, then react accordingly. Because if I'm going to be sympathetic, I'm totally sympathetic for certain things, and then I'm empathetic for other things.
Mhm.
I think it's
Mhm.
really important as leaders that we distinguish that. So I really appreciate that you laid that out. I
I'd
mean,
like to
there's
leverage, if I may, for a
yeah,
moment, your thought on that, because you know the cry today, again, the decree. We keep hearing certain things coming out of today's environment, and one of them is this psychological safety, this emotional safety.
mm,
People are not going to join a culture that has been defined as toxic or whatever, creating the lack of that
yeah,
kind of safety. And one of the quickest ways that leaders can build that emotional, that psychological safety is to align just in how we communicate. Because that person who doesn't want to hear the weekend, dissertation on what you did and wants to get straight to the task, at that moment you've engaged him, they don't feel safe.
right.
They feel like I'm out of control here.
Yep,
And that's when we set up behavior that's unintended. We didn't mean for them to feel that way. But that's why it's so important for leaders to align with the needs. It's servant leadership. That's the latest, the greatest, the most probably profound leadership model that could serve all leaders well today.
sure.
It's servant leadership.
Come on now. I want to be in leadership because I want to tell people what to do, right?
You're right. Because I
I don't
get to
want them
fire them
telling
on
me what to
demand.
do. Come on, let's get serious here, you know?
Seriously, right?
Right. But I think what you stumbled on something really good as we start to land the plane today. You know, safety in the workplace tends to be thinking about, you know, don't walk under a ladder, the floor slippery, that type of safety, right? And I
Right.
think that the safe part that you're talking about, I think I think of trust. If I'm not safe, then I don't think there's trust
Correct.
in there. I can't trust anybody here.
Right.
And the research shows no trust equals no engagement. So again, if you have a group of people that you're questioning their engagement, I think it's helpful to look at what is the core here is, if I don't trust you, why would I possibly want to be engaged in this? Why would I possibly have, you know, betterment on my mind? Why would I possibly want to be a better person? Why would I want to possibly do a better job serving the customer, or, you know, engaging others on my team? And the research shows, you know, that if there's no trust in the office, if there's no trust in the workplace, the chances of engagement are like 1 in 12,
Correct.
you know, and when there is trust, that goes to like 1 in 6. I mean, it really changes. So I really think that I try to take as much responsibility from a leader's perspective, because I can't control my team. I can control myself. And if I
Right.
could control them, it'd be, you know, get back to work. Like when I was my first job making pizzas, you know, I was 15 years old. Those
Yeah.
guys, they didn't care about me. They just said, get to work, you know, make a
Right.
pizza, make us some
Right.
money, shut up,
Get
you
busy.
know, who cares if your arm hurts or whatever, right? It's just like, get back to work. There's 20
Right.
guys waiting for your job, you know? So, I
Yeah.
mean, obviously times have changed, but
Big
as we
time.
land, I just want to know, what
Yeah.
advice would you give a leader today that's
Yeah.
listening, that may be struggling with some of this?
Yes, I will go back to resonate with the phrase we've both coined here: people are people first, and come from that acknowledgement first. So, what that means in practical deliverables is, as you think about your business plan for 2023, it's just as important, if not more so, to define and mindfully think about what is your humanity strategy here for your company.
Yeah,
What Go after that with your same focus and intent as you would your sales strategy, your
yeah,
marketing plan, your budgeting process, because you lose 10, 5, 1 of your best people all of that is going to go south. And we're struggling with the people thing. I'd like to leave everyone with a quick activity, if I may, just to build this trust and build this culture. And it fits right with what people are wanting today, belonging and a sense of purpose. Here's what you can do. Either remotely, if you've got teams that are dispersed elsewhere, or in person, I want you to ask this team collectively to think about the person that, as a team, they would want to most impress. Might be the owner, it could be the CEO, whatever, it doesn't matter. But who would you want to most impress here with this team? So they have this person in mind. The second question, after that person spent a day with our team and watched what we did and shadowed us, what 3 words would we want that person, as they're driving home from that day, to think of to describe our team? And have everyone list those 3 words. Now, what's fascinating is have them do it anonymously. You can collect them, and we're going to start to see patterns, right? There's probably going to be a grouping of 3 words that seem to have appeared more often than not. Those become the core that everyone has contributed essentially to saying, here's what we want this culture to be. They've helped define it. They've helped created it. And then we take it one further step. Okay, team, what behaviors are we going to demonstrate every day that will drive these 3 words? And it really helps to coalesce what we're defining as this culture. It helps to build the trust. And more importantly, it gives folks a sense of purpose, contribution, having a voice, and a sense of belonging. So if we could just start that much going into 2023, we've layered a great foundation.
That's fantastic. And I think that human strategy gets missed because there's marketing plans, there's sales plans, there's expense budgets, there's sales, extensive sales paths that we're taking, but for some odd reason, that whole human side gets forgotten. So thank you for that piece. That's a great spot to end. And for people listening today, if you have kind of like been tweaked about something like I have, I'm going to encourage you to start by doing something. Grab a copy, of Merrylue's book, jump on her website, do that exercise. But if somebody really wants to reach out to you, Merrylue, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yes. Primarily LinkedIn. I am most active there. I have links to the website. There's also all of the other materials and things I've provided on YouTube. So those would be my 3 avenues. And I'd like to offer a gift to your listeners. If you go to my website, it's bigquitsurvivalguide.com. And if you click on the tab that says download survival kit, the password is survival. And if you enter that password, you will be able to download over 75 pages in an 8.5 by 11 printable format of all the activities, the scripts, the checklists, everything. I would like to offer that for your listeners.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Thank you so much for that. So there again, if you're listening and you still are bummed, there's a great spot to go. Go to what is it? Is it the big? Is it
no, just
again for me?
Yeah, no,
Different ones on my notes. So
yeah, bigquitsurvivalguide.com.
Gotcha. I had the in there for some. The book is The Big Quit Survival Guide.
That's correct. Yes.
And congratulations on making Amazon #1 bestseller on that. That's fantastic. So again, for people listening, please don't just jump into your next activity. This is really serious. Your team is desperately needing you to make some kind of adjustment. They want to do a better job. They need to do a better job. And I think the most important piece that gets missed is your customer needs a better team And that's why I wrote my book, Growing on Purpose, to make that connection between an engaged team provides a fantastic experience. So this has been so fun, Merrylue. I have to say, I've never had Merrylue spelled the way you spell it, Merrylue. So that is pretty cool. So
Yes.
if you're looking up her on LinkedIn, it's Merrylue, and then Martin spelled normal. So thank you so much for hanging out with us. And I can't wait to read your book, and I can't wait to download. Jump on that website, everybody, and use survival as the word, and you'll get all this stuff. And thank you so much for your time today.
Truly my pleasure, Dave. And thank you for the opportunity. I very much appreciate it.